welcome to our next exercise, which will be counting in compound time. So please don't move on to this page until you've done the first page, which was counting in simple time. So the first page was counting in simple time, which was our last video. And according to the cover, we need to be able to play that at 50 beats per minute, counting in compound time. So the exact same speed that we played the counting in simple time. So let's go to it. So if we have a look at the very first line, you've got crotchets here, but there's a little dot in front of it. Okay, so what that dot does is it increases the note's value by half of its original value. So if you had a whole pizza, if you were to increase the whole pizza by half of a whole pizza, you would have a whole pizza plus a half pizza. Alright, so you've got more pizza. Okay. For us in drumming, it just makes the beat last that little bit longer. And we can explain this in more detail when we start talking about fee. Excuse me. So we're just going to count it for now. And you'll notice as well, all of these exercises have repeat marks. So we're going to repeat every single line. So very much like counting in simple time, when we played a crotchet on its own, we counted just one. So it was 1, 2. When we count dotted crotchets, it's going to be the same. So the first group will be 1, second group will be 2. And I'm going to zoom in just a touch, see if I can move this over. Will it fit? Yes, it will. Awesome. So that would be 1, 2, 1, 2. And this is where it gets a little bit confusing because we're not used to seeing crotchets and quavers. And this may be the first time you see a quaver on its own. Okay, remember that up above, those were quavers here because it had the one stem underneath it. That stem, when you've only got one quaver on its own, is swapped with a tail. Okay, and that tail, that is the tail there. The little flick coming up off the bottom of the note is the tail. So that's a quaver. Crotchet, quaver, crotchet, quaver. And because we said before the crotchet was the bigger of the notes, alright, or lasted longer, then it needs to be stretched that little bit longer than a quaver would. So you would still say 1 and you would still say 2, but instead of saying and for the quaver, when it's in compound time, we need to say d or d. 1 d. I always say d, not d, d. And this one's the same. So it would be 1, d2, d1, d2. And compound time, we spoke about simple time before. Simple time was when the beat note could be split in half. Compound time, it cannot be split in half. It gets split into 3 equal pieces, which you'll see down here. 3 notes there. Okay, so we'll count that separately in a wee second, but they can be split into 3 parts of equal lesser value. So this would be 1, D2, D1, D2. And you play it exactly how you say it. So you'd be 1, D2, D1, D2. Swing it, like really swing it. So anything played in compound time is going to have a really, really nice swing to it. So if I get the beats out, I'm going to play that whole line for you. You would be 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, D2, D1, D2. And you would repeat it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, D2, D1, D2. Okay, so let's try it as a group. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, D2, D1, D2. And then repeat it. Let's do it. Ready? 1, 2, go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, D2, D1, D2. And repeat it. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, D2, D1, D2. And that would be your whole first line. Okay? Moving on to your second line, we can see it's all quavers here. And when we're playing in compound time, we don't count them as 1 and 2, because that one there can't be 2. That's number 2, because it's the second group. So it needs to be 1 D, 2 D. 1 D, 2 D. And very straight and very round rhythm to these groups. And you might think, well, I've played the D before. You have, that's it there. Okay? 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2. 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2. And then your second group of bars is the same. 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2. Note though, that second group starts on the left. Cheeky, cheeky. Alright, you need to be aware of that. Okay, and again, we've got the repeat marks, so we have to repeat it. So let's try it. Ready? 1, 2. 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2. 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2. And repeat it. 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2. 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2. And that's it. Okay? It's surprisingly easy. Surprisingly easy. So I'll try that line again. Ready? 1, 2. 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 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 2. Done. So moving on to your next line, all we're doing here is mixing up crotchets, which is 1 and 2. Quavers, 1 D, okay, or 2 D if you're this one. So you're just mixing them up. So you get 1, 2, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2 D, 1, 2. Surprisingly easy. Surprisingly easy. Okay, and again, let's do this one to the beeps. Ready? 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2 D, 1, 2. Repeated. 1, 2, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2 D, 1, 2. And I'll play that line repeated once more. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2 D, 1, 2. And repeated. 1, 2, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2 D, 1, 2. Done. And it should be one more line. Yep. So now all we're doing is mixing up the quavers again. 1 D. And like we did in our first line, we've got the crotchets and quavers. So that's either 1 D, or if it's a second group, it's 2 D, as it is here. So working our way through the whole line. 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2 D, 1 D, 2. And you would be repeating that. So we'll do that whole line. And again, if you're not following the crotchet quaver rhythm, 1 D, 2 D, then please go back, practice it, say it, get a feel for where everything lies and lands on the beat, and then try it again. Okay? Let's do that last line. Ready? 1, 2, 1 D, 2, D, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2, D, 1 D, 2. Repeated. 1 D, 2, D, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2, D, 1 D, 2. And I'll do that last line once more. 1, 2, 1 D, 2, D, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2, D, 1 D, 2. Repeated. 1 D, 2, D, 1 D, 2, 1 D, 2, D, 1 D, 2. And that, guys, is the whole page done. So what I think we should try is if I zoom out just a touch. Yep, let's do that whole page. So we'll do every single exercise on that page, starting with line 1, repeated, straight in the line 2, repeated, then 3, then 4, repeated, and we'll stop at the very last tap there, and then that'll be us done. can hear my kids outside. They're getting a bit boisterous, so this might have to be the only time I try this. Let's try it from the top. 1, 2, go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. Repeated. 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. Second line. 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. Repeated. 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. Third line. 1, 2, 1, day 2. 1, day 2, day 1, 2. Repeated. 1, 2, 1, day 2. 1, day 2, day 1, 2. And last line. 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. Repeated. 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. 1, day 2, day 1, day 2. Done. And you might have noticed, in fact you will definitely have noticed, whoops, that when I was doing the 1 and, or 2 day even, sorry, I was saying 2 and stretching it with my voice. Okay, that's not a bad habit to get into with stuff like this, because I'm stretching that note, but I'm using my voice to stretch it. Not an awful idea. Okay, 1, day 2, day 1, day 2, and I'm keeping it all within that beat. Okay, so that concludes counting in compound time. You might have looked at the time signature and thought, why have I not explained that? I intentionally didn't, alright, because I'd rather explain that on a theory lesson or a theory video, okay? And you might think, well, there's not 6 beats there. I know there's not, okay? But there's 6 of these notes here. That's what this is telling us. But again, a little bit confusing for now. Okay, as long as you can play it and you understand how to speak them and count them, and you know that they're quavers, you know that's a crotchet, you know that's a quaver, then honestly you'll find things much easier moving forward. Okay, our next exercise will be single stroke development, as we can see here, and it's in 2/4 time, so we're back to simple time, and you'd be surprised this exercise is fairly easy. Okay, fairly easy, so look forward to that one.